Okay, so let's talk about some of the differences when you're looking at investing. When you're talking about again, when people use the term real estate investing very loosely in the in this space, when we say investing, but sometimes it's not investing. Sometimes it's called real estate dealing. IRS has a term dealing, which means you're basically like a car dealer. You're buying and selling. So you're not really investing. You know, if you had somebody that says I'm a car investor, that means they have a collection of cars. If you have somebody that's a car dealer, that means they sell cars. So it's a difference. So same thing with real estate. People talk about investing, but they lump everything into one category. You know, everything is considered investing. Whether you're flipping houses, building houses, you know, doing renting rooms, etc., hotels, whatever they call everything investing. But it's not all investing. Investing is really where you're holding the stock or you're holding a portfolio. So when we talk about commercial real estate versus residential real estate, it's two different you know animals. Residential can be commercial when you start dealing with anything above 5 units. So 5 units or 5 units and more, it would be considered commercial, even though it's residential. But then you could be looking at mini storage, self storage, that's commercial. You could be looking at strip centers, that's commercial. You could be looking at shopping centers, hotels, um, even an amusement park, you know, is considered commercial. So commercial is a commercial use. And so that's, and then there's different rules that applies to the tenants if you're leasing that property to someone. People even have land that is, you know, they'll build it to suit whatever you want. That's commercial as well. Like a lot of the malls around here are built, like North Park Mall, for example, is built on I think they had 100-year lease on that land, and so but the family they still own the land. They lease that land to the mall, and so they'll probably be and those the descendants of the owners of that land get money every month through a trust. So you probably heard of trust fund babies. So they get money through that trust from that commercial real estate. But commercial real estate is really good, especially if you're in a city. You know, I look at downtown Dallas recently. Neiman Marcus closed their office downtown. I mean, closed their store downtown because the rent got too high. But back there was a time when downtown Dallas was a ghost town, and it wasn't that long ago. And they could have bought that building or bought any building and moved into it. But instead, they stayed there and continued to rent. And I tell anyone who is in the business, if you are in any kind of business, whether it's a restaurant business, clothing business, entertainment business, whatever kind of business you're in, I always encourage you to own the real estate because if you own the real estate, nobody can jack the rent up on you. And I always encourage people to own their own homes, you know, because again, unless you have some affinity, like you like to move a lot, you know, around the country, then maybe you shouldn't own. But owning real estate is really good. It's probably one of the best um, sources of wealth that you can accumulate wealth on demand. And then you got to have a place to live anyway. So anyway. Um, when we deal with commercial real estate versus residential, as it's talking about whether you're brand new or going, you've been doing it for a while. The main difference is the type of tenants that you would acquire. So if you're dealing with, for example, let's say you're dealing with a commercial tenant, that commercial tenant is responsible for a lot of times it's what's called a triple net lease. So they're responsible for the insurance, they're responsible for the maintenance, they're responsible for the taxes, you know, everything. All you do is just give them the building and give them access to the building whenever they want it, and then they're responsible for everything else. And they pay you the rent and they pay everything else. When you're dealing with a residential tenant, only thing they're responsible for is to pay the rent. You're responsible still to pay the taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance in most cases. So that's one of the big differences between residential and commercial real estate, especially when dealing with tenants. You know, one of the things when we talk about when you look at real estate and the value of the property is based on a lot of times location, location, location. You know, when you are in a very dense population where there's more people, of course, the value goes up because of supply and demand. It's just basic economics 101. So I think that when you look at buying real estate, especially if you're getting started, maybe you don't have a lot of capital to get started, then you may want to go out into some of the outlying areas, maybe some rural communities, because people need to have a place to live everywhere. If you wanted to buy and hold, if you wanted to buy and fix up and sell, then you want to be in a place where real estate is moving very quickly. And there is some terminology, and we call it the vocabulary of the rich, and that is you want to know what terms, what things you want to know what things mean. And so when you look at valuation of real estate, you look at things like days on market, or what's called DOM. So how long does it take for a piece of real estate to sell in a particular neighborhood? And if it takes 30 days, that's a really hot market. If it takes 6 months, it's not quite as hot. If it takes a year or more, then it's a very slow market. So that you want to look at that. Again, you have to look at it based on what exactly it is you're trying to do. Again, if you're looking to buy and hold, then you got a different objective. You can buy and hold virtually anywhere. And when I tell people about buying and holding, you don't want to buy and hold in an area where you feel unsafe, to go there. But you can actually buy and hold anywhere, including war zones. But I wouldn't encourage anybody to buy in a war zone. We don't really have any real war zones in Dallas like that, but there are communities across America that are, can be pretty dangerous. There are some states you probably want to avoid. I've got a cousin, she lives in Chicago, and she tells me about how hard it is to get people out if she has to evict them. It's like very difficult. You got to serve them like you're serving divorce papers to even start the eviction process, so they can duck and dodge, get service. And so, you have to be careful about where you are investing, what areas, what cities, what states. Again, Texas is a very landlord-friendly state, so it's a good state to invest in. There are a lot of states in the South that are very landlord-friendly. But once you go up north, sometimes you start having, and out west, like in California, you have a lot of rent control and different things like that. So those are things you have to, pitfalls. And so those are things we're going to discuss on this channel to really help you to navigate. We're going to get into the nitty gritty, and you guys send in your questions, your feedback, and because I'll answer all the questions. We'll answer them, either me or one of my guests will answer questions you have, and really help you to navigate your real estate investing career.
This podcast is brought to you by the Dallas College Venture Club. It's a co-working space, and it is a creative hub for collaboration, innovation, and podcasting, located within the vibrant community of Dallas College. Dallas College Venture Club offers a dynamic environment for entrepreneurs, small business owners, creatives, and podcasters to thrive. It's a co-working space. You can bring your laptop, or you can work on one of the computers, work in one of the hubs, or even record here in the podcasting studio. It's available here in Dallas, and you can find out more information by visiting Dallas College Venture Club.